Since I got access again to Europa Universalis 5, I've played about 14 or so games as Byzantium, and I'm going to explain to you guys in detail today what exactly changed, how my experience was, and I've had most of them complete games all the way into the 18 or 1700s, but I'm also going to talk about the games that I didn't complete and why I didn't complete, because I think that's extremely important for you guys to know. I'm using footage from my old Byzantine video of EU5, which I released in May. If you guys want to see the video itself, you'll see a link to that in the description. And I got a little bit of a request. If you're planning on pre-ordering Europa Universalis 5 or any games from the Paradox forums, consider using my link in description. I get a commission on every single purchase with that link. It should tell you before you proceed with the checkout that creator referral has been activated if you use the link. I do content creation full-time, and links like these, affiliate links, is literally how I keep the channel going, so I really would appreciate it. I know I said this a lot of times, and I'm sorry if I keep bugging you guys with it. We can now get into the video itself. So first off, one of the biggest changes is the economy tab, right? Let me make my camera a little bit smaller here because I'm too big, clearly. So in the previous version, you would start with like 1,000 debt from day one, and you would only have the option of getting 8.8 ducats available for loan, which means you could not even take a single loan. So if you don't fix your economy from day one, you would go bankrupt from the start of the campaign. That's not the case anymore. So now you start with 61.62 ducats as debt, very little. And not only that, but you actually have up to 508.49 ducats available to you to grab from the estates instead of just 8.85, right? And loan size is 27 because your base tax has also increased. It is now 55.30. So this is really good because it means Byzantium is actually playable at the start of the campaign compared to what it was before. However, don't get too excited because just after the game starts, you're going to get 2 to 3 events that will lower your finances. You have a couple of options. You can either go for the minus amount of ducats, and yes, they're called ducats now, they're not gold anymore. Or if you choose not to go for the minus ducats option, then you get really bad stuff. So you 100% will likely go for the minus ducats. So you end up with minus 1,200 roughly in the first few months, which means you still do have that 1,000 debt, except it's 1,200 debt and it's just delayed by a few months. You have the option of not going for that. You lower your stability and so on, which is worse arguably because stability and legitimacy already is pretty bad from day one, and you need it to go to 100 if possible. One of the biggest issues as Byzantium is literally stability and legitimacy at the start of the campaign. So we see here we have -4 stability and 10 legitimacy. That's it. That's not changed. In the current version, it's exactly the same amount, and you get more stability reduction and legitimacy reduction from a variety of events. For example, one of these things that lower your stability is the rise of the Turks. This is still in the game. It's still extremely brutal. It gives you -20 stability and lowers a lot of pop satisfaction. It's gonna be interesting dealing with it. We'll get to how I deal with the rise of the Turks very easily in a few moments, although I'm not sure if I should tell you because they might nerf it, but to be fair, they should nerf it, so I'm gonna tell you. Another major change at the start of the campaign is the privileges. So what they've done is they've made the 4 starting negative privileges of the Byzantines significantly more difficult to revoke. They also changed the amount of stability required and how it works for revoking privileges. The base cost for revoking a privilege is 400 stability. Now the maximum stability you can have is 100, so clearly you cannot revoke privileges if they cost 400. The way they go around that is they lower that 400 cost of revoking a privilege by modifying the cost with the power of the estates. So if the base cost at the start is 400 to revoke a nobility privilege, for the Byzantines in particular, that is modified by -55.14% from the estate power of the nobility, basically because they have 44% power, right? Which you see over there. Well, they had in the previous version 46. Now they have 44% actually, so that's a change there. And the crown has 22%, the clergy has 19, the astoi or the burghers have 9%, and the peasants have 3%. So there have been some power changes as well for the privileges. But if the dinatoi had 100% power, it would cost 400 stability to revoke the privilege, which means you would not be able to. If they had 10% power, it would be -90% cost than the 400 base cost. So that's like 40 stability to revoke the privilege. Basically, it's scaled with the power of the Dinatoi. There are other modifiers that obviously modify this further, but coming back to what makes these particular privileges bad, as I showed in the previous video, and I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't already watched it. Massively good watch. Even now, after so long, I recommend you watch it again. The Byzantines in this version, in my opinion, are worse than they were in the previous version, but we'll talk in a second why, and why that's like, how do I put this? If you know how to navigate those particular set of events, then you come out stronger than you would before. Whilst before, and this plays into the whole flavor and mechanics of the game, because before, what would happen is you would have a straight line of growth, basically. Now, it's a lot more fluctuating, and that's because of the flavor added and the mechanics and the events and everything. Anyway, so when it comes to the estates themselves, as I was saying before, one major change that has happened is you need 95 legitimacy in order to get rid of the 4 privileges. So those are special privileges, right? The ones the Byzantines start with. You start with 10, you get like 6 events that lower legitimacy from day 1. So for you to get a 95 legitimacy, which is close to 100, it's gonna take years. Usually you're able to revoke those privileges around the 1380s, 1370s if you're lucky. You might a little bit earlier. I actually managed to revoke the peasant one around 1359, 1360, something like that, and that was simply because I got lucky with some of the events that gave me legitimacy increase. But the worst one is the nobility one, because not only the legitimacy, you need stability. So because the power for the peasants is little, the power for the nobles is massive by contrast. So it takes literally 15.59 stability to revoke the peasants privilege, the negative privilege for the peasants, which lowers the max tax for peasants by 25, lowers the manpower by 25. 15 stability is basically nothing, easy to revoke because they got no power. But the nobility one, 179 to revoke that one from day 1. You obviously lower that a little bit, but it's still going to be insanely expensive. So even if you do have the 95 legitimacy, the nobility privilege to revoke is going to be an absolute pain. That's why in this version it's a lot more difficult, Byzantium. And we also have more than that. Why else is it difficult? Well, first off, you actually have scripted events for civil wars now. So what does that mean? It means that before you had a chance of stuff happening. Now you have a guarantee of stuff happening. You have 2 or 3 civil wars guaranteed, where half your country breaks away. You go back into the dark ages after every single civil war. It's pretty brutal, and that's when the Ottomans take advantage and they push in and they break you and they destroy you. That's how it happened historically. Okay, historically the Byzantines were way stronger than the Ottomans in 1337. You can look this up yourself if you want. They were pretty strong, both manpower, economically, but the problem was that in the 1300s they had 3 civil wars, my dude. 3 of them. Those civil wars, half their armies destroyed their economy, and then to top it off, there was also a massive earthquake that destroyed the walls of Gallipoli and left the garrison, which was already depleted, basically unprotected, giving the ultimate opportunity for the Ottomans to get a foothold in the Byzantine lands, simply because they were unchallenged. So that's what Paradox is trying to simulate, which I love, by the way, because that's literally how it happened historically, right? So they give these civil wars, they give these horrible events to show you what the Byzantines felt like. Beautiful. I love that. If you're playing as the Ottomans, it is an absolute free game. Ottomans are ridiculously overpowered. There's 2 nations, in my opinion, that are really overpowered right now. The Timurids, which are crazy overpowered, and the Ottomans. We'll get into those when we do specific AARs for both of them. Before we go into how to crush the Ottomans easily, because that's also a thing, I also have to mention that when it comes to each age and the unique technologies that you get, because I've seen people confused about this, you in fact keep those technologies. So these advances are forever. They don't get destroyed once the next stage arises or anything of the sorts. No. Once you've researched the advance, then you have it forever, basically. Now, how do we get rid of the Ottomans easily? Well, you have to go into debt. So what do I do to fix that? Well, I do exactly what I did here. I crank up my cost of court, I crank up my stability to maximum, and to double down on it, I also assign my cabinet members to do the same thing. So we assign them to increase stability and we assign them to increase legitimacy. That roughly gives around 0.79 stability or 0.8 depending on the skill of your cabinet member, and we also get like around 1.5, 1.6 legitimacy per month depending on the skill of the cabinet member, of course. So legitimacy you can actually get back fairly easy, but the problem is if you crank both of these up, you end up with minus 23 ducats per month. You could lower that by, say, not spending anything for diplomatic, forts, navy, army, and then you you tax as much as you can, everything, you end up with 11.98 ducats a month from the first month of the campaign, right? So let's say minus 12 ducats. You can take 27 ducats loans. So what you end up with is about 1,000 to 1,500 debt by the point where you have enough stability and enough legitimacy to start revoking the privileges. If you do this though, and this is what I like to do, you can start revoking those horrible privileges from the first few years. If you're lucky with some of the events as well, some of the events can increase stability, they can increase legitimacy. Usually doesn't happen for the Byzantines, but it can if you want to. You can reload or whatever. You can revoke in the first 5 to 6 years. I'm not even kidding. The privileges, which is a big deal, except the military, except the nobility one. That one you still have to wait till the 1370s to revoke. It's that brutal. Now, whilst you're doing that, you also have to focus on expansion, because unlike the previous patch, it's worse now. The Ottomans and the various Turkic beyliks convert significantly faster. So after 30 years of Ottomans and beyliks owning all of Anatolia, there's like 10 to 15% Greeks left, or let's say 30 to 35 if you're lucky, because they get different events that allow them to convert that stuff aside from actually manually doing it. So it depends on luck, really. It's RNG, the amount of events they get, right? Conversion to Sunni is worse. From what I noticed, they first convert to Sunni a lot and super fast, and then they convert to their culture. So in this game, your primary culture and your religion is super vital, right? And if you don't have pops that are your primary culture, you're going to struggle a lot. You have a lot of primary culture pops from day one, but they're all on the Anatolian coastline, this side. So the main idea is from day one of the campaign, you wait for the Gurmians to die. So the Gurmians are these guys over here, and the Gurmians have an event. They start actually with Karasids, Saruhanids, and I think Aydins. They start as their subjects. So they get an event. After that event, everybody becomes independent. So you can start getting casus bellis, because you do have claims on all of the coastline Anatolian beyliks, including the Ottomans. You try and grab the entirety of the coastline as soon as you possibly can. Doesn't matter if you have 3,000 ducats in loans, just focus on grabbing the coastline. You can fix the economy afterward. Primary concern is making sure you have those primary culture pops not get assimilated to Turkish, because then it's basically GG's. So to put things into perspective, I was around in the 1500s, right? And in the 1500s, obviously the inner part of Anatolia is 100% Turkish, 100% Sunni, because they converted by that point a long time before they converted already to Turkish and Sunni, right? When I grab those provinces in the 1500s from the inner part of Anatolia, it takes me so much effort to convert them back to Greek, to convert them to Orthodoxy again. And until I do both of those things, it's basically just pointless and useless territory. Now in the current meta, and this might change, and I'm going to put the control map here because this has to do with the control bit as well. In the current meta, what you do is you make subjects. So you have two options. You can make historical subjects, basically nations that historically existed, or you can make custom subject. Custom subjects, basically a subject that's based in a province. So say the province of Vardar. You conquer Vardar from Serbia, and then you make a subject that's called Vardar, because that's the name of the province. Now you can give to this Vardari subject all the other Serbian provinces, or Bulgarian, or whatever you want to give them, and they're likely going to have primary culture, whatever is the majority there. So Bulgarian and Vardar would be Orthodox, because that's the primary culture, the majority of the culture in there, and they're going to be a subject. Why is that a good thing though? You just lost that territory. It's not yours. Well, because if you kept it, you had zero control. You need to spend time to integrate it. You need to spend time to convert it to your culture, to convert it to your religion. Religion is already converted, but the point is, it takes a long time. It's dead land until you do that. So what you do is you create a subject, they integrate it for you. So once you integrate that subject, it becomes your cores, or your integrated land if it's not your culture. You can ask your subject to convert to your culture, so then maybe they're going to actually convert it to that culture as well. You can ask your subject to convert to your religion, so they might convert to that religion as well, the lands. So in Anatolia in particular, that's the plan. After you grab the coastline of Anatolia as the Byzantines, for the next 50 years, you have to fix your economy. You have to get some decent allies. You will have some ally options then, because you will be a lot stronger. You don't need to go push into the rest of Anatolia. You just grab the coastline. So you grab the Ottomans, Karasids, Saruhanids, Ainids, Mentasids, all those guys. Maybe Germiyanids too. That's it. Then you sit on that for 50 years with no expansion into Anatolia. All the rest of the Greeks, Cappadocians, Pontics will disappear in the meanwhile. They're all going to be Sunnis. But that's the best thing you can do, because you need at least 50 years to integrate the newly conquered provinces, to get rid of the Sunni and the Turks that are still there, because there's going to be some, of course, and make it fully Greek Orthodox, strong core lands from where you can base your economy, you can base your army, and you can can march into the rest of Anatolia afterwards. Then you grab it, you make subjects, you convert those subjects to your religion, so they do the conversion for you, they integrate the lands for you, and then when they're done converting or assimilating the pops too, if you convert them to Greek, when they're done with that, you integrate them. So you didn't spend any of your cabinet members to do all of that. It was done by your subjects. That is basically the meta in the game right now. It is really powerful, unbeatable, because it's the same like having 100 cabinet members. If you make 100 subjects or whatever, right, they do all the work for you. And there's two types of subjects. There's vassal and fiefdom at the start of the campaign. Difference is a fiefdom has the exact same leader, so whatever your leader is, in our case Emperor Andronicus III, and he becomes the leader of the fiefdom too. With a vassal, you actually have a separate member of your court that you can assign. You can choose who you want that vassal to be in charge of that land, and then they give different bonuses to. The fiefdom only pays 20% of their income to us, whilst the vassal pays 20% of the income, but also gives 20% based institutions in the capital of the overlord. But one cool thing to do with this is if you have a subject that has already embraced a meritocracy, like an Eastern subject, you can get that meritocracy spread to your country a little bit faster by getting them as a subject, as a vassal. So that's a really smart way of getting institutions that you don't have already. Or you can just make some subjects in Italy, small nations in Italy, make them a vassal, and then you slowly build up that renaissance in your country that otherwise would take a lot longer to get, right? So that's, again, one of the metas in my opinion. Now, when it comes to control, this is what actually killed about 3 of my runs. I'm gonna go ahead and say that I sucked at the game when I got the game again for the first 3 to 4 runs. I didn't understand exactly what the meta is, and it took me a while. After a while, I realized that just naval is insanely overpowered. Shout out to Playmaker also. He also explained some things. He's got a lot more experience than me with the EU5 right now. To put things into perspective, in the first few runs, around the 1400s, my control was like this, like you see it in this particular video right now. It was basically exactly like this. Was my 1400, let's say 1380 control. That's really, really pathetic. Let's say a little bit more than this, not exactly like this, just a tiny bit. But after I started changing and I focused 100% on going full naval, getting 100% proximity in my provinces, obviously building the right buildings like the docks, the wharfs, rushing for barks to increase the proximity a little bit faster, I had literally 100 control in half of the provinces you're seeing on the map right now. 100. I made all the coastal locations I turned into towns, which allowed me to increase the proximity reduction modifiers because of the buildings in those towns. Crazy how broken that is. I'm 99% sure they're gonna nerf the schnitzel out of it because it is way too strong right now. And then from the control that you have in the coastal towns, you just build up your roads and you increase control inland a little bit more. But that's what I mean, like coastal locations are way better than inland locations right now. So as the Byzantines, grabbing just the coastline of Anatolia is literally meta, in my opinion at least. Remember, I only have like 300 hours at this point. My opinion is likely going to change because I've changed my own opinion like 5 times since I started playing again. So keep that in mind. That's very important, right? Learning how to do the control is very important because control means you have an easier time assimilating, converting. You get more out of your provinces. Around the 1460s, what happened was I already had a really decent situation, right? So the first few games when I sucked, around the 1460s, I had around 30,000 levies, 30,000 levies, and like just the coastline of Anatolia. Then after I think game 6 or game 7, it became more intuitive for me to build stuff the proper way and to do things the right way, I guess. So because of the change in control, because of the change in population, because I managed to increase my population quite a bit too, I doubled down on development a lot, used a lot more subjects. So I went from an average of, let's say, 30 to 40,000 in the first few campaigns to 100,000. So that's a pretty serious difference in my opinion. Now that being said, I did expand a little bit more. I took a lot more of Anatolia, so once you have the power base going fast, you can expand a lot faster too, right? So that played into it also. Regardless of which run, be it the first or the last, every single one of my runs, I had some issues with other nations, namely the Mamluks. The Mamluks are ridiculously overpowered. I had 100,000 soldiers, but they had half a freaking million, dude. How? In the 14 freaking hundreds. Are you serious right now? Every single time they got strong enough, they attacked me, right? Because we were bordering each other basically. And when that happened, I won every single battle. Like I have better troops, obviously. I position my troops a lot better too. I know how to use formations now, and I take advantage of a larger fleet, so when they try to do naval invasions, I wipe out 20 to 30,000 soldiers at a time by destroying the fleets, so they lose the soldiers that were on the ships. So I destroy their army big time. But they have the power to regenerate that freaking the freaking army instantly. I don't know how. So it's like battle after battle, battle after battle. I have to concede. Like, I best case scenario go for a white peace, or I give them, like, I dismantle some of my forts or something, like something easy, you know, like give them a couple of ducats, whatever, to make them go away. And then once the truce is over, they attack again. So that's rinse and repeat for a very long time until you slowly start munching in. You try and make them collapse. Another nation that gets ridiculously strong is the Timurids. If the Timurids survive, there's two options, right? If the Timurids die, because there's an option that they die early on when they might go away very fast, and then all the problems are solved. But if they don't go away, because of the unique mechanics they've got and the buffs that they get, they are a massive pain to deal with. Also, the Jaya-Irids are a massive pain to deal with. You see here on the map, the Jaya-Irids, well, this is a little bit different now. They're not exactly there. That's a subject of theirs, and then they're a little bit to the south. But that's the Eretnids, I think. It just says Jaya-Irids when you back out on the map. They're really strong also. They're very small though. So if you win a war against them and you make them cancel at least a subject, they completely collapse, the Jaya-Irids. So that's nice. That's very easy collapse right there. Took me a while to find that out though. So I now try to rush for a war with the Jaya-Irids early on to make them collapse, so I don't need to deal with them when they get significantly stronger, when they centralize a little bit more. Okay, I actually took a picture of this little political map so I can use paint to show some other things. Also, the cultural map mode, yes, this is exactly how it is now as well. The Turks become majority in inland by the 1360s as they did. That hasn't changed. What has changed is the amount of events, I think, might have increased, or the frequency of the events might have increased. And also, I want to address another little thing about the 1370s when you get the event for the Hellenic Reviver. It is very difficult to get it. Sure, even if you have the tolerance and everything, I think there's a very small chance of him triggering the Hellenic path, because I did all the prerequisites and it still didn't trigger, and it hasn't triggered in all 14 of my runs. So I don't know. I guess on the one hand, it's good that it doesn't trigger very often, because you don't want to see Hellenic Byzantium in every one of your gameplays. It's just weird because it's not really historically plausible. But at the same time, it sucks, man. I also wanted to play as Hellenic Byzantium. I will definitely trigger the event eventually though. I'm gonna play Byzantium a lot more before the game comes out, and one of those runs is definitely gonna be the Hellenic one. All right, so we're using paint and we're painting on the map of what we had in that particular game. Why am I doing this? Because I want to show you guys exactly what my expansion looked like, so it's a little bit more easier to follow if you see something in front of your eyes. So obviously this is what the Byzantines look like at the start of the campaign. You have also Epirus as your little subject. You have a little bit of a foothold here. You've got the Philadelphia here, another little foothold here, and Epirus Subjecticus. Obviously you want to integrate the Epirus as soon as you can. You'll obviously have the Morea part 2. And first few years, like I said, you go Karasids, you try and take as much of this as possible. Usually they ally Aydins and Saruhan, so you get all of this area in one war or two wars. Then you push Fomenticids second, and then Ottomans third. Now, I also tried to do Ottoman War Day 1, and it worked. This is where I was talking about that it should be nerfed because it's a bit broken. Once you have your first parliament in 2 years, ignore all of this stuff. Instead, ask your parliament to give you a casus belli on the Ottomans. And the Ottomans are significantly weaker than you at the start of the campaign until you have your civil wars. So you are able to destroy the Ottomans. They usually only get Karasids as an ally, so if that happens, you can grab the entirety of the northern parts here, which is massive W. Obviously, you cannot grab the entirety of the Ottomans. You're going to grab a few cities, so let's say you grab this much, but this is usually what really matters, because you've got 40-50,000 pops in some of these locations. Maybe even grab a little bit of the coastline of the Karasids, so you end up with this bit in the first war, and then the other part in the second war. And then you get rid of the Ottomans altogether, which is going to be a pain if you don't, so you're set. Now, in my first few games, this expansion was similar to what I had, right? But it sucks. This is what year? This is 1421. Okay, yeah, that's not good for 1421. We want to have, by 1421, this much, all of the Greek areas, which is not difficult to get, especially since most of this is owned by Venice. This is Venice, and this is all Greek people. This is all Venice. This is the Greek people. Venice here, Venice here. These are very easy areas to grab from the Venetians, because the Venetians are very weak early on, and you can just get 3 times more galleys than they have and just crush them navally, which is just ironic, right? Now, when it comes to Anatolia, this should be your core area. This is where your main directly owned area should be by the 1420s. You want to have this incorporated. You want to have this majority Greek, majority Orthodox, and then this by 1420 should at the very least be your subjects. So what I like to do is I like to make Trebizond the subject and give them all of this land. And then they do the heavy lifting for me. And then in this area, if possible, make a Turkish buffer state. So this Turkish buffer state will stay Turkish. Now this Turkish state you want to convert to Orthodoxy first and foremost. That way they start making all of this land Orthodox for you. Later, if you want, you can make them Greek as well. But you got to remember, you get 100 liberty desire whenever you convert them to your religion or to your culture. So you got to choose. You want Greek or you want Orthodoxy first. As you keep on expanding more into the rest of this area, you want to do the same. Get subjects. Another subject here in Eretna. Another subject here that's going to be an Armenian subject. And I actually was sitting in the way, so you guys probably didn't see that. But yeah, here, this is Armenian land. This majority of this is Armenian. So you can make either Cilicia, but it's usually dead by the point you get there. You can revive Cilicia, or you can just make your custom nation and you give them this land and you make them all Armenian. Cyprus also directly owned because it's Greek area with Orthodoxy. So this is what your country should look like by the mid 1400s. That is an optimal start. If you do all that, you'll have around 100,000 soldiers total army. So that's about 20 to 30,000 standing. That's actual professional soldiers, and the rest are levies. Now the worst Mamelukes will likely have about 250 to 300,000 soldiers by that point. The best one would have 500,000. So just hope that you get the worst one. Again, all of this stuff, guys, is likely gonna get changed by the time the game comes out. I'm just telling you guys what my situation was right now and how I dealt with it. I use my navies a lot in the Mameluke wars, and I try and trap them in the little choke points amongst the mountains here in Anatolia if I can. Try and outnumber them. Try to go for the smaller stacks, not let them merge into bigger stacks. Standard stuff for E4 players, in my opinion. It's still doable, even though they have a massive army. I think one of my runs I had only 20,000 soldiers. That was one of the initial runs, and the Ottomans had 150,000 soldiers in the 1390s, and I still managed to win. I actually did win. I took land from them in that one because I wiped out their navies a lot, and the navies were carrying soldiers, and then I trapped some soldiers on islands. I trapped some soldiers in little peninsulas and stuff. So yeah, it's definitely doable. If you know how to play E4, you're gonna have a lot of fun with EU5 for sure from that perspective. I also want to talk a little bit about the late game, which in my opinion is very interesting to say the least. Nations usually get very strong in the late game, so whoever gets strong gets stronger by the late game. Usually it's the same people if you keep it on historical AI. So that's like French, Spanish, Mamelukes, obviously Ming or whichever other nation came out of Yuan. Delhi surprisingly survives a lot and gets really strong, and one nation that never does anything and usually dies out is Muscovy, which is really disappointing because Muscovy has some of the most powerful advances and mechanics. Like the Muscovites can get 100 control in all their provinces, land provinces, which is very difficult to get. Almost nobody can do that. Muscovites can do that, but AI Muscovy just struggles, I think, with its initial situation with the Tatar yoke and everything, and it just dies. It doesn't die, it still stays on the map till late game, but it just stays very small, which is a little bit disappointing to see. Same with Brandenburg, either dies or stays the same until late game. Poland gets a little bit bigger. Bohemia gets super strong usually, but it doesn't grow, it just plays toll. It's like the ultimate playing toll nation. It's weird. England gets really strong, and that's because England usually goes super colonial. I've noticed England goes more colonial than the Spanish do, which is weird. Sometimes the Spanish don't go colonial at all. So like the entire North and South America is English and some weird shit. I think my last run was Lombardian. Lombardia formed and they colonized the New World, apparently. That's the thing. When it comes to expansion outside of Anatolia, going into the Mamluk lands, going into North Africa, etc., usually around the 1530s, 1540s, I start going into North Africa first. Then I slowly munching into the Mamelukes. Obviously Cilicia, which usually they get very early on, and then I grab the Syrian parts, grab Libya, leave the actual strong Mameluk hold for last, because that's just really tough. And it's also a lot of antagonism. I haven't yet formed the Roman Empire, as in all the Roman Empire borders. I'll be honest, I haven't, because I didn't have that as a goal, so never actually went for that. I'm trying mostly to learn metas, trying to learn mechanics properly in this particular path. So the highest extent I had was all the Mamluks, Anatolia, all the Balkans, all of North Africa, the south tip of Italy, south tip of Spain, and all the islands in the Mediterranean. That's the highest extent I had with the Byzantines by the 1800s. I do think it would be possible to get the entirety of the Roman Empire as the Byzantines, but I think it would be late 1800s, and you would have to really push for that, and you would have to be very, very aggressive. Also, speaking of aggressiveness, antagonism is easy to get rid of if you improve relations with nations. You actually lose one antagonism per month if you improve relations with that particular nation, but it's per nation. So if you have antagonism with the 100 nations, good luck with that. You're not going to have diplomats for that because you have very few you got like 3 diplomats and you gain very slow diplomats. So it's not that easy to get rid of antagonism. More of a thing that you want to use against specific nations to make sure those nations in particular don't join the coalition, because there's definitely going to be a coalition. Now, before we continue, I also want to do something that I promised you guys I'll do in the previous video, namely answer the questions when it comes to religions and what exactly you guys want to know. So Sigismund asks, how much Zoroastrians are there at the game start? I think you missed covering them. That's true, I did actually mix covering them. We're gonna have to go to the religious map to figure this out. So if you guys see here, there's a little hashed blue around the Shiite and the Sunni areas. Those are Zoroastrians. There is a buttload of Zoroastrians actually. In fact, at the start of the campaign, there's 441,000 Zoroastrians. And what does the Zoroastrian religion give? It gives trade efficiency plus 5% and tolerance of the true faith plus 1. Another question was about the Celtic group. So Celtics are, the group is Irish, Welsh, Cornish, Highland, Norse, Gael, and Breton, and they're pretty much all of Ireland, most of Scotland, almost all of Wales, and like half to 60% of Britannia. I'm obsessed with invite settlers action since I discovered Icelandic culture was free to do it from the everyone can do it from the beginning, not just the Icelandics. I invite settlers as Byzantium from day one as well. I mean, I don't know, maybe there's nations that cannot do it, but the nations I've played, all of them have the option of doing it. Crispy Panda asks, how many Romanians are there in overall all the Romanian groups? So Wallachians, there's 496,000 of them. Moldovans, there's 340,000 of them, and Transylvanians, there's 301,000 at the start of the campaign. There's also Romanians, which are also part of the Romanian group, and there's 106,000 of them spread around the Greek, Bulgarian, Serbian, and Bosnian and Croatian areas. They're very spread out, and there's very few of them. Plus, there's also Istro-Romanians. That's right, they also added Istro-Romanians. There's 1,321 of them, and they're only in the Istrian Peninsula. Their language is Romanian, their culture group is Romanian, and they disappear very fast because there's very few of them, sadly. Now, one Romanian group that is obviously not illustrated is Megleno-Romanians, which are also a group that exists that, yeah, it's just not there. And also Dalmatian should be part of the Romanian group, not the Italian one, but it is a part of the Italian group right now. Reality is Dalmatian was more of the breach between Italian and Romanian, basically, because it's literally the border area between the two different types of Latin, in essence. So it has elements of both galore. Like, the Romanian hearing Dalmatian would understand everything, and an Italian would too, for sure. Is it possible to change to another culture primary? Yes, it is possible. Polish is divided into lesser Polish and greater Polish. You can, later in the campaign, there is a technology that allows you to unify your culture group into one culture. So all the different Poles can become just Polish, all the different Germans can become German, etc., etc. But this is very later on in the campaign. Somebody asked population in the Philippines. It is a lot of population. There's Tagalog, there's Pangasinan, Ilocano, there's basically Bicolano. There's basically every island has its own culture, pretty much. Gemistos Plethon, indeed, that is the guy that can trigger Hellenism, and he lived for 90-something years. Yes, he did pass away in 1453 or 1454, maybe 1455, I don't know, right after the fall of Byzantium, basically. And he passed away in the Despotate of Morea, so he was in the southern part of Greece when he passed away, but was originally from Constantinople. Simulation is way too fast for my liking. I fully disagree with this. I actually think it's really well balanced, the simulation rate. Assimilation is not too fast. I mean, how do I put this, man? It is very, very accurate and very historical, in my opinion. You'll see when you guys get the game itself, it is not too fast whatsoever. If anything, I'd say maybe make it a little bit faster, because you really will struggle if you don't have even a base 30 to 40% of your country being primary culture. It's going to be an issue. I mean, of course, you can compensate by accepting a lot of different other cultures, but there's only so much cultural capacity you can have. I used your code! Oh my god! And now your soul is mine! No, thank you, kind sir. I love you. Thank you, guys. If you do use my code, I really appreciate it. If you don't, make sure you use another creator's code at least, so it doesn't go to waste, so at least somebody gets something something out of it. Love you all. Thank you for watching my videos, and I will see you in the next one.